everyone, Leslie Cornwell here with Midwifery Business Consultation. This section of the online course has to do with midwifery billing and coding tips with ICD-9 and 10 diagnosis codes. ICD-9 was used prior to 2015 and ICD-10 is past 2015. So these courses will be focused just on ICD-10, but if you ever hear the words ICD-9, I want everyone to understand it was just the prior coding system. Understanding the importance of ICD-10, it's really important to do this for proper billing. It has to do with, one, you don't want to create insurance fraud for putting the wrong diagnosis code on a claim, even if it's by accident. Your reimbursement will get affected. Many claims will get denied if you're not using the proper diagnosis code for what you're ordering. The overall administration responsibilities will increase. Phone calls back and forth to the hospital. This isn't the correct diagnosis for the ultrasound. The families will be calling saying they have a large outstanding balance for something with your practice or something you had directly ordered. Correcting claims, it's just, if you get it right from the beginning, it'll save everyone a lot of time. And the family's final responsibility, if you're not reimbursing, putting your codes in correctly, and now it's a non-covered service, the family is responsible for 100% of the charges. So that would include your services if it's, or you may get stuck writing it off, but also at the hospital, if you don't correctly code that routine anatomy scan under pregnancy, you put her thyroid disease as the primary principal diagnosis, the insurance plan will say that diagnosis is not a proper reason for that testing, and the family will get a bill for 100% of it. Most of the time, they're going to be calling their insurance company and finding out that the diagnosis needs to be updated. And then they're going to be calling your office to get a new order sent over to the hospital. So there's a lot of benefits just getting your coding all correct at the beginning. The rare situations where billing isn't as big a deal, if you have a straight cash practice, like if you're doing an Amish Mennonite religious organization, that you aren't processing claims directly, but you still have to have a basic understanding so that the diagnosis code is put in correctly to the lab testing, the prenatal panel. If you're doing a TSH, checking a thyroid throughout the pregnancy, you need to understand ICD coding. So just the basics of what ICD-10 diagnosis codes are. There's a whole thick book. People will go to school for billing and coding. My goal with these courses is to help a midwife with the basics, help her understand what is an ICD-10 code, what is a CPT procedure code, what's the difference between professional charges and facility charges, what are sample codes that a midwife can typically charge, because our goal is you want a successful business and you want to be able to get reimbursed for all the services you're providing. There's a lot of things based on quality versus quantity, time, location, that are really important to understand as a midwife what you can bill based on these guidelines. The courses and future courses will give you a good foundation of what is ICD-10, how do you pick a diagnosis code, and where do you go with the next. There are an ICD-10 7-character alphanumeric coding system. It's a lot more complicated than the ICD-10, but that's a good thing because now there's more things covered that weren't covered before. That's more specific, and there's so many great resources out there nowadays that you can Google search and find the code you need. The biggest thing is you want as specific as possible. You want the one that pertains to the care you're giving, your documentation and your notes, the testing you're ordering, the claims you're billing out for services. So it's beneficial to put, she has all these things you're thinking about because it'll increase that level of complexity. She's got blood pressure issues, she's got thyroid disease, she's got some vaginal bleeding, threatened preterm labor, it's her first baby, she's had babies before, she's had a history of fetal demises. Those things will help defend why you're ordering a test, why you're spending extra time with her, why you're billing more for that visit. All these things are really important for defending your charges and reimbursement request. So there's 3 characters on the ICD-10 that are called categories that it breaks down into subcategories. As a midwife, you don't have to understand the details of this. We just have to make sure we put the proper code down, and we're putting it's in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. We can't be putting on our diagnosis, this is her first baby, when she's had 3 other kids before. It's going to flag in your documentation and it's going to get rejected as a claim. So you have to be very thorough that you're picking the most specific code that has to do with her care. The ICD-10 diagnosis has to do with that encounter, today's visit, not when you saw her last week. This claim you're billing out, especially if you want to bill out for care outside of a pregnancy. She came in for a earache and a cold today. Outside of her pregnancy, you can bill for that, but you have to understand the principal diagnosis, documentation to defend it, modifier codes. There's a lot of things involved to understand getting reimbursed and not having to appeal and peel for just putting the right codes at the beginning. So is this the first time you're seeing this person, especially something more primary care? Is it the initial encounter, or have you seen this person before? So if you're doing well woman care, and this woman has never came in before for thyroid disease, and now this is the first encounter, that makes a difference, versus she's already been diagnosed and now you're modifying her treatment, you're following up with a plan of care. That makes a difference in that diagnosis code. Sequela has to do with complications. She's already had this prior disease or injury, and now there's a complication. Something has happened in conjunction with that disorder. So those are less likely for a midwife, but I just want everyone to understand what it is. So when you're looking things up, they give an example here more with lungs, like how complex and going down. The great thing is if you use these resource tools, put in pregnancy, it'll give you the subset categories. The more specific you can get, the better. So here's a list of all the categories. As you can see in the second column, middle level, all the O's and the P's have to do with pregnancy. If you're doing well woman care, or you're also co-managing a lot of other medical conditions, there's other categories you might be involved in. So thinking of hypertension, thinking of more primary care concerns you might be going into, but most of your codes will be in the O's. Making sure on your claims you put O's, not zeros. The great thing is if you're using an EMR system, that you just start typing in pregnancy and the diagnosis you're looking for, and they'll give you compatible search diagnosis. So a lot of the EMR systems are really good nowadays to help you pick the best diagnosis code. But sometimes if you don't know exactly what you're wanting to look for, you have to find other resources to find the code that makes the most sense to you. Understanding when to use a code. She may have 20 things on her history, her history list, but you have to understand, I want to put on the claim the things that are affecting my decision making and documentation for today. So if she had her appendix removed 20 years ago, you still do not want to put that on for her routine pregnancy claim documentation. You want to put that on for just the history of the paperwork. The other important piece of this is, with any diagnosis, if you do not put the principal diagnosis on the claim, so for example, she's pregnant, but she also has thyroid disease, she also is having some bleeding during the pregnancy. If you don't add the vaginal bleeding, if you don't add the reason you're ordering an ultrasound for placenta location, you're just putting she has thyroid disease, but you're not putting the other things on or putting them out of order. The insurance company is going to deny it and make it a non-covered service, and the family is going to be calling you with a large bill and wanting you to correct your order you've done. Genetic testing is the same way. If you put normal healthy pregnancy versus she's advanced maternal age, or a family history of cystic fibrosis, and that's not the principal diagnosis you're putting at the top, genetic testing companies are going to deny the claim, and then the family is going to be responsible for thousands of dollars worth of bills. So it's really important for us as midwives to take coding seriously and make sure we're documenting all the codes we're using, we're putting them in the correct order, and we're putting the diagnosis that are pertinent to the care or the testing we're doing that day. The benefits of being specialized as midwives, we don't have to know thousands and thousands of codes unless you're doing well-woman primary care more. But as pregnancy care providers, we have such a small fraction of the codes to learn and reference. The biggest thing is just knowing your resources to find the correct codes. A lot of EMR systems will have them easily put into the system for you. And they'll give you suggestions if you're ordering HCG test for confirming pregnancy or worried about miscarriage. Typically the system will flag most providers that order this test will also have this diagnosis associated with it. So I just put on the sheet some references of coding systems, but the biggest thing I like to stress is our responsibility as midwives is to give great care and to help make reimbursement with the insurance companies as smooth as possible with our practice and with any labs, ultrasound, or testing that we're ordering at outside practices, so we can help our families get reimbursed for care that their insurance plan would cover. Thank you.